is an agenda on the part of the U.S. that while this is an unjustified invasion, the U.S. has in fact provoked it and is trying to take advantage of it at this point in time. A lot of people in the global south realize that ever since the Soviet Union fell apart, NATO and the United States tried to take advantage of it in an aggressive eastward expansion of NATO right onto the countries that would border the Soviet Union, including the Ukraine. The other thing is it's not only been NATO expansion, it's also been active interference in Ukrainian politics, oftentimes supporting far right-wing fascist groups within Ukraine. And the Central Intelligence Agency has indeed been very active in that sort of thing. So my sense is that one cannot discount real security fears on the part of Russia, on the part of Putin. I mean, this is almost like, if Ukraine enters NATO, you're almost creating a situation in which NATO and U.S. Nuclear missiles would be right at the border of Russia, pretty much like in 1961. During the Cuban Missile Crisis, the whole rationale of the U.S. for calling that sea-wide quarantine by Kennedy was, in fact, to say that short-range missiles would be right about 90 miles away from the United States. So that, I think that is the kind of concern and fear that you have at this point within the Russian leadership. So I would not sort of say that that is really an illusion, as one of your earlier speakers had said. That's very real. And the problem, of course, from my point of view, is that, as our friend from Jacobin said, there really could have been a diplomatic solution to this whole thing. But the U.S. was not interested in that diplomatic solution. I think what Russia probably would have been interested in pushing was creating some sort of a neutral zone of countries, bordering Russia, that would in fact not be hosts for NATO and its nuclear weaponry. So a diplomatic solution that could have created a neutral zone, was pretty much, I think, the rational thing to do, given the security concerns of the Russians as well as the independence concerns of the Ukrainians. But I think the West was not interested in that. And I think while this invasion must really be condemned, I think one must also acknowledge that the U.S. has played a provocative role in this whole thing. The other thing that I would like to also stress is that the U.S. is desperate for some credibility at this point in time, especially after the very shameful exit from Afghanistan, in which it lost a lot of credibility globally as well as within its allies in Europe. And I think one of the tragedies of this Putin's move has been to give the United States, a sort of an opportunity to try to assert that sort of superpower leadership for the West. Now, some people are saying that, hey, doesn't this sort of create a situation where China might be tempted to take over Taiwan, and that's sort of in the air, but which is, I think, pretty silly. First of all, Ukraine is not tied to the U.S. by any sort of security treaty. Taiwan is, despite the fact that the U.S. has this contradictory policy of recognizing just one China. Secondly, U.S. military forces, are in the Taiwan Straits. They own the South China Sea. The Seventh Fleet is there all the time, so that the Chinese are not foolish enough to think that that any sort of invasion of Taiwan would